Hi friends, welcome to pharma classes. Today we are going to discussing about drug absorption. So here what is a drug absorption? The drug absorption is a process of movement of drug from movement of drug from site of administration to site of action or systemic circulation. So here the drug absorption is a process of movement of the drug from site of administration to systemic circulation. So for example, the most widely used or commonly employed route of administration is oral route. If you consider oral route and if you administer the tablet in a oral route, first it is enters into the stomach where it is undergoing a first initially the tablet undergoes a disintegration and converting into granules, small granules, then it undergoes a dissolution and converting into a solution. Now the drug in the form of solution, it has to absorb through GI membrane. Here there is a membrane. The movement of the drug across the membrane and enters into the, here there is a blood circulation, blood capillaries, and enters into the blood. Through the blood it is reaching into the various organs and showing its action is known as, so here whatever the drug which is administered orally, first it undergoes the disintegration and converting into fine granules. Now it is undergoes the dissolution and convert into solution form. Whatever the drug which is present in dissolved form, it is absorbed through the GI membrane and enters into the blood circulation. Through the blood it is distributed to the various organs and showing its action, that is known as therapeutic action or pharmacological response. So here the amount of the drug which is reaching into the blood is known as systemic. The amount of the drug which is enters into the systemic circulation is known as bioavailability. Whereas in case of IV or intravenous administration, if the drug is administered by the intravenous route, it has the 100% bioavailability because there is no wastage of the drug. We are directly injecting the drug into blood. Hence in this route, in case of IV route, we can observe the 100% bioavailability. So here the drug absorption is a process of movement of the drug from site of administration. In case of site of administration, in case of oral route, we administered through the oral cavity. Now the entry from this from the site of action to the systemic circulation. So the total process is known as the drug absorption. The movement of the drug from site of administration to the entry of the drug into systemic circulation is known as drug absorption. So here in case of orally administered drug, the absorption is limited by it has the two rate limiting steps. One is the dissolution. If the drug is a lipophilic drug, if the drug is a lipophilic or hydrophobic drug, it has the rate limiting step of dissolution. It is a dissolution rate limiting factor. It is one of the rate limiting step. Whereas if the drug is a hydrophilic drug, then the permeation of the drug through the membrane, here there is a GI membrane, the entry of the drug through the membrane, then only it is enters into the systemic circulation. If a drug is a hydrophilic drug, it is limited by the drug permeation through the membrane. Hence, the absorption of the drug which is administered by the oral route, it has the two rate limiting steps. One is, if the drug is a lipophilic drug, it is limited by the dissolution. It has the rate limiting step of dissolution. If the drug is a hydrophilic drug, it is limited by permeation through the membrane. So permeation is the rate limiting step. So here for any drug to show its maximum or for any therapeutic success of the drug, it will depends on two factors. One is rate and second one is extent of absorption. So the therapeutic success of the drug will depends on two factors. One is rate of absorption, second one is extent of absorption. If you see, rate means speed with which the drug enters into the systemic circulation. It is nothing but speed with which the drug enters into the systemic circulation is known as rate. Whereas extent means amount of the drug which is enters into the systemic circulation. Speed is nothing but speed with which the drug enters into the systemic circulation, whereas extent of absorption means amount of the drug which is enters into the systemic circulation. For any therapeutic success of the drug, success of any drug will depends on these two factors, rate as well as extent of the drug. The significance of these two factors can be explained from the time versus plasma concentration. So already we know that after administration of the drug at specific intervals of time, we collect the blood sample and we examine the amount of or concentration of the drug in plasma. And this graph is known as plasma concentration time profile. So it has the two boundaries. One line is known as minimum effective concentration line. Second one is maximum safety concentration line. For any drug to show its action, it must crosses this line. So it is the minimum concentration. For any drug to show its therapeutic action, it has to cross this line. If any drug plasma concentration is beyond the maximum safety concentration, it produces toxic effects. So this region is known as toxic level region, whereas this region is known as therapeutic region or therapeutic window, whereas this level is known as subtherapeutic level. This is the therapeutic region or level. So for any drug, for therapeutic success of any drug will depends on both rate and extent. So these rate and extents, the significance or importance of these two things will be understood from the time versus plasma concentration. So here we consider the two drugs. For example, the first drug, a drug which is slowly absorbing, a drug which is slowly absorbing but completely absorbed, slowly and completely absorbed. Whereas B drug rapidly absorbed, rapidly and completely. So in case of a drug which is slowly absorbing and completely, even though it is completely absorbing, because of slow absorption it will not enters into the therapeutic level. It is present, it is slowly absorbing but completely it is absorbing. It will present in this region only under the therapeutic level. So it won't produce therapeutic action. It indicates therapeutic failure, which leads to therapeutic failure. Whereas B drug which is rapidly and completely absorbed, so hence it is showing a therapeutic action. So here there is a therapeutic success will be observed. It indicates there is a therapeutic success. So here if any drug which is slowly, even though it is completely absorbing but it is slowly absorbed means, so it is present within a subtherapeutic level, it indicates there won't be any pharmacological action. It indicates that there is a therapeutic failure of the drug. Whereas another drug which is rapidly and completely absorbed, so it is rapidly attains or reaches or beyond rapidly, it crosses the minimum effective concentration and enters into the therapeutic level and shows the pharmacological action. So here it indicates the therapeutic success of the drug. So here, and moreover in case of the rate and extent, so if it is rapidly absorbed means the rate of absorption is important in case of acute conditions. So wherever the condition is acute condition, so mostly the diseases are of two types: acute condition, acute diseases, another one is chronic diseases. So in case of acute we require the emergency, so here we require the relief immediately in case of emergency. So in case of acute conditions we get it is an emergency condition where we need a immediate action. If any drug which is rapidly absorbed, that means with a high speed it is absorbed, it is easily crosses the minimum effective concentration and within a less time it is showing its action, we get the relief. So hence the rate of absorption is important in case of acute conditions where we require the immediate action, that means emergency conditions. Immediately we require the action, therapeutic action. For example, angina pectoris. For example, angina pectoris or a heart attack, where in such conditions within a seconds we require the action. We need to relief from the condition. So here in such conditions, if rapidly it is absorbed means, so rapidly we get the relief from that condition. Whereas in case of extent of absorption is our amount of absorption is important. Extent of absorption is important in case of chronic conditions, chronic diseases, where we require, so if the amount of the drug which is reaching into the systemic circulation is more means the intensity of the action is more, the therapeutic efficacy is more. So in case of chronic conditions we require the more intensity of action, more intensity of action rather than extent of rate of absorption. So hence in case of chronic conditions we require a most high efficacy of the drug. In such case there is a we require the extent of absorption should be more. That means higher amount of the drug is reaching into the systemic circulation, it produces more intensity or more therapeutic efficacy, hence there is a great control, more control of the disease. So here for therapeutic success of any drug we rate as well as extent of the absorption is very important. In significantly in case of the acute conditions the rate of absorption is very important, because if rate of absorption or speed of absorption is more we get the immediate relief. So for example in case of angina we require a immediate action, within a seconds we need a relief. So here rate of absorption is important in case of acute conditions, whereas extent means amount of absorption. So if the amount of absorption is more, the therapeutic intensity or therapeutic efficacy is more. So this is an important parameter in case of chronic conditions for a proper control of the disease. And here the next things, so for any drug to absorb it must crosses the biological membrane. So for any drug to absorb mostly the most of the drugs are administered by the oral route, hence it has to cross the GI membrane, GI gastrointestinal absorption. So we had to more focus or emphasize on the gastrointestinal absorption of the drug, gastrointestinal absorption of the drug. Gastrointestinal absorption of drug, because of more patient compliance most of the drugs are 90% of the drugs are administered by the oral route. Hence to show for any drug to show its therapeutic action it must crosses the biological membrane. That means in case of oral route most of the drugs are administered by oral route, so 90% of the drugs are administered by oral route. Hence so if the drug is administered by the oral route or other than IV route, so other than IV route, other than IV or intra-arterial route, except intravenous and intra-arterial route, remaining all routes absorption is a prerequisite step. Absorption is a prerequisite step where we observe the absorption step. Absorption is the first step for pharmacological response of the drug. For any drug after administration to show its therapeutic action it must passes through the absorption step. So other than IV route, intravenous route and intra-arterial route, where in case of directly we are administering the drug into either veins or arterial, in such case there is no membrane, hence directly the drug will be enters into the systemic circulation. Other than these two routes, so whatever the drug, it may be topical or it may be oral route or it may be intramuscular or intradermal, where we can observe the membrane, biological membrane. So for any drug to show its action it must crosses the biological membrane. So the crossing of biological membrane is known as the absorption step. So hence other than IV and intra-arterial route, absorption is the prerequisite step. So among all the routes oral route is the most commonly used route, hence we had to more focus on gastrointestinal absorption of the drug. also most of the drugs are administered by the oral route. Hence we are more focusing on or emphasizing on gastrointestinal absorption. Before knowing about what are the routes, what are the different processes involved in the absorption, first we should have the basic knowledge on biological membrane, that is a GI membrane. So if you consider the GI membrane, it is a similar to all the membranes. It is also made of phospholipid bilayer. It consists of phospholipid bilayer. So similar to that of all the biological membranes, the GI membrane is also made of phospholipid. They are amphiphilic in nature. Here it is a phospholipid bilayer. Here it is a phospholipid bilayer. And in this bilayer, always the non-polar or lipophilic tail is always present inward. The non-polar tail is always present inward. It is present inwards. Whereas hydrophilic head, the polar head is present outwards. So here the GI membrane is made of phospholipid bilayer. Always the lipids are arranged, the phospholipids are arranged in such a way that, so always the non-polar or lipophilic tail is present inwards, and whereas the polar hydrophilic heads are present outwards. And the membrane is also consist of globular proteins. These are globular proteins and present on either side of the hydrophilic boundaries. So they are present on both the sides of the globular proteins. These are known as globular proteins. Globular proteins are present on either side of hydrophilic boundaries. So in between these, so this bilayer is sandwiched with lipophilic, the bimolecular lipids. The lipids are sandwiched in between. So the phospholipid bilayer is sandwiched with lipids, the bimolecular lipids. So whatever the drugs which are having a high lipophilicity, they are easily crosses this biological membrane, because of this biological membrane is lipophilic in nature. It is the biological membrane, it is a lipophilic in nature. If the drug is a lipophilic drug, if a drug is lipophilic, it is easily crosses the membrane through these lipids. It is sandwiched with these lipids and easily forms the mosaic. So it is easily crosses the biological membrane. And whereas if any drug, so in between these, membrane is also consist of aqueous pores. The membrane, it is also consist of aqueous pores which are having a diameter of 4 to 10 angstroms. So these are known as aqueous pores. These are known as aqueous pores. Aqueous pores are perfusions. So here it is a aqueous pores. If any drug which is a non-ionic as well as small molecular organic compounds like urea, small organic molecules, small water soluble organic molecules like urea or any non-ionic compounds. Non-ionic compounds can be absorbed through these aqueous pores, or water soluble molecules are absorbed through these aqueous pores, which are having angstroms of 4 to 10 angstroms. Whereas if the drug is a lipophilic drug, it is easily passes through these lipoid membrane by sandwiched with these lipids. So and here this biological membrane, it is a semi permeable in nature, semi permeable in nature. So the biological membrane is semi permeable in nature. That means it will allows the most of the nutrients which are required for our body, growth of our body. So it is must allows the, it is permeable to nutrients. So glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, all the nutrients can easily enter through these biological membrane, whereas it does not allow the medicaments on toxic metabolites or toxic materials. So the survival of the person or human beings or whatever the living things is based on this mechanism. So semi permeable, the biological membrane is semi permeable in nature. It will allows the only the nutrients which are required for the growth of the body, so that is amino acids, fatty acids and glucose. The remaining compounds are not permeable through this membrane. So that is medicaments or drugs. So this is the nature of the cell structure. So remaining things the drug absorption mechanism or different process of drug absorptions we will see in next class. Today in this class we discussed the basic steps or basic things regarding the absorption, regarding the absorption, the process of movement of the drug from site of administration to the systemic circulation is known as absorption. If you consider the oral route, so we are administering the drug, after that it is enters into the stomach and where it undergoes the disintegration, dissolution and converting into solution. Now the solution form of the drug, it is easily permeated through the membrane and enters into the blood. So the process from the administration to the entry of the drug to the systemic circulation is known as absorption. The total drug absorption in case of oral route, it has the two rate limiting steps. One is the dissolution, another one is the permeation. If a drug is a lipophilic, it is a dissolution rate limited. If a drug is a hydrophilic, it is a permeation limited. So after enters into the blood, it is through the blood it is reaching into the various organs and showing its therapeutic action. It is showing therapeutic or pharmacological action. And amount of the drug which is enters into the systemic circulation, it is known as bioavailability. In case of IV route, so the directly we are administering the drug into the blood, hence we can observe the 100% bioavailability. So whereas in case of drug absorption, the rate as well as extent of absorption, both are very important factors. For therapeutic success of any drug will depends on these two parameters. If any drug which is slowly but completely, even though it is completely absorbed, there is a therapeutic failure because the concentration is below the minimum effective concentration. If you consider the another drug which is rapidly absorbed, it is easily attains the therapeutic level and showing the action that indicates therapeutic success. And here the rate of absorption, that means the speed of absorption, is important in case of acute conditions or emergency condition where we require the immediate action, whereas the extent, that means amount of absorption, is important in case of chronic conditions where we require the more intensity of the action. The therapeutic efficacy of the drug is important in case of chronic conditions. And here mostly we administer the drugs. 90% of the drugs are administered by the oral route. So even though we administer, so in case of other than IV and intra-arterial route, intravenous and intra-arterial route, except these two, most of the drugs which are administered by any of the routes, they have the absorption step. Absorption step is the prerequisite step in case of all the routes of administration except IV and intra-arterial routes. So where the drug has to cross the biological membranes. So most of the drugs are commonly administered by the oral route, hence we are going to more focusing on the gastrointestinal absorption of the drug. So before going to understand this, we should have the basic knowledge on the cell membrane, so physiology and cell structure. So the cell is made of the phospholipid bilayer, always the chain non-polar tail is inwards and high polar heads are outwards, and here there is a globular proteins are present or associated with the either side of the hydrophilic boundaries, and lipids are sandwiched in the membrane. So if the drug is lipophilic, it is easily crosses through these lipids, whereas if the drug is a polar one, it has to cross through the membrane through the aqueous pores, which are having a diameter of 4 to 10 angstroms. Mostly it is allowable to the small water soluble molecules like urea and non-ionic compounds. Organic, non-organic, inorganic compounds can be easily crosses through this aqueous pores. And here the membrane is having a semi-permeable in nature, which will allow all the nutrients, whereas it will not permit the medicaments and toxic metabolites. That's why there is a survival of the living things. Thank you one and all, and the next things we will see in next class.